Hi, I'm Josh Carter, and this is Flying for Life. On the 2nd of November 2022, MAF pilot Ryan Koher was supposed to fly supplies to an isolated orphanage in Cabo Delgado, Mozambique, when he was stopped by airport security just for carrying vitamins. Little did Ryan know that he would end up in a foreign prison for 4.5 months for a crime that he did not commit. What started as a misunderstanding over paperwork soon escalated to suspected terrorism. After Christmas in jail, separation from his family, and over 2 years of legal wrangling, Ryan's case was finally dismissed on the 8th of November 2024. Ryan and his wife Annabel share their incredible story from Idaho in the US. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Ryan, I mean, you are a free man. Congratulations. It's an amazing story. What's it like being free and having freedom?
Yeah, it's great. It's really a weight off, and it's really exciting because this allows us to go back to Mozambique and continue serving with our MAF program there in Nampula.
Yeah, and you're there with a kind of dual role, aren't you, really? Because for MAF, you're a pilot and also you're an engineer. Is that right? So tell us about that.
Yeah, so Ambassador Aviation is the name that MAF serves as in Mozambique.
Right, okay.
So we are a registered airline with the government. I'm a pilot and engineer or mechanic there. And my job is to fly the airplanes and help keep them maintained. So most of the people and development are in the southern part of the country where the capital city of Maputo is. But we serve in the northern part of the country with Mission Aviation Fellowship. And in the northern area of the country, it is less developed, and there are greater distances between villages and towns, and not as many resources for people.
Yeah, cool. So, I mean, let's go back to that fateful day then, the start of this amazing story. What were you actually supposed to be doing? It was November 2022. It all went badly wrong. What was your job for that day? And then it took a very different turn.
Yeah. So it was a fairly normal flight, a cargo only flight. So it wasn't taking passengers. I was just flying some cargo. So we're based in the city of Nampula, which is in the northern part of the country. We were chartered by an orphanage that we partner with fairly often. We do a lot of flights for this orphanage. They hired us to fly down to a city in the southern part of the country called Inhambane and to pick up a load of supplies for the orphanage and fly those supplies back up to the area where the orphanage is, and back up to the northern part of the country. We do this particular flight for this orphanage once a year. So this is not the first time we've done it. It was the first time I've done it. So it was fairly routine in that way.
So what was the cargo? What were the supplies you were bringing in?
Yeah, so the cargo, it was mostly like games and toys, some items for babies, like baby food. And then there was a small chest freezer and a few packs of vitamins, maybe like 30 bottles, mainly for the staff at the orphanage. And there was also several bags of food preservative.
So when did you first realize, oh, hang on a minute, something's not quite right here?
These supplies were brought from South Africa by two South African men. One of them used to serve at the orphanage. The other guy was just his friend that was along for kind of a vacation. So they brought the goods that the orphanage ordered from South Africa. And I was going to pick up the goods and fly it out. So that morning we got to the airport, and first indication of a problem was the security agent was interested in the vitamins. He seemed to think that we needed a permit to carry those. And apparently there's a new law to say that you need a permit to distribute vitamins. So maybe it didn't technically apply to us, but, we had no idea about any of this. So he was really concerned, and he wouldn't let us put the stuff on the airplane. So the goods never actually made it out to the airplane. It just stayed in the terminal So I negotiated with him at first, and then after about 3 hours of discussion and trying to get through, the head of the police got involved, the Department of Health got involved, the city got involved, the airport was involved. So you have all these officials, and by the end of 3 hours, there were like 20 people in this room trying to figure this thing out. So it was kind of escalating, and they were just not going to let us take the stuff and board the airplane. So around that time, a decision was made to take away our passports and our phones and take us to the police station.
You must have been so surprised at that. And also, I'm
Right.
assuming you were in an MAF uniform as well. So you must have looked reasonably official, like you weren't just, doing something that was a bit dodgy. So I'm assuming you must have been thinking, what is going on here?
Yeah, I wasn't terribly surprised because stuff like this happens occasionally. It hadn't happened to me yet since I've only been in the country for 11 months when this happened. So I was pretty new to the program. But it happens where, there's an issue and then they take the pilot and people involved to the police station and we sort it out there. Usually it just ends with a fine or they let you go. So I wasn't terribly concerned. And I thought it was just going to turn out like that, or they would just let me go by the end of the evening. I figured the flight probably wasn't going to happen the way I thought it would. Like I'd just be going back empty because the stuff would be held up or something. But so I wasn't expecting anything terrible at this point.
Yeah. And then you end up spending the night there in the police station. Were you able to tell Annabel about that at that point? Were you able to still communicate with her, or were they taking your phone by that point?
Yeah, so on the way to the police station, they actually forgot to take my phone. They took the other two men's phones. They took my passport, but not my phone. So I was able to call the program manager, Roland, and let him know the situation. Like we were going to the police station, and there's an issue with the vitamins, and that's all the information I had at that point. And they did end up taking my phone after I made that call. But they ended up giving it back later that day after I went back to the airport. I was also able to text with Annabel at that point. Again, we weren't really expecting anything major at this point.
Were you worried at that point, Annabel, when you heard that? You were thinking, oh, hang on, he's in a police station. It's not like the normal call from your husband.
I was already kind of nervous about like something's not right because I knew Ryan was supposed to already be back that day, and I wasn't able to get a hold of him. In the morning, he did text me and let me know that they were having some issues with paperwork. And so I knew there was something going on. Again, didn't really think anything of it, but did think it was odd that I hadn't been able to get a hold of him for the rest of the day. So now we're talking about, right around dinner time, and I'm finally getting information from our teammate about, okay, Ryan says that he had to be taken into the police station and they're dealing with stuff there. And then again, I heard that he was going to be held overnight, and I was able to text with Ryan at that time. And my thought is sometimes this happens where they take you in and they want to talk with you and they're going to sort it out at the police station. Them holding him overnight was a little odd, but it was a Friday. And so they had to close, and the weekend they couldn't do anything. And so for that aspect of it, I was like, okay, hopefully it was still going to be minor and they would just let him go. And as far as we knew, it was just a paperwork issue that really pertained to the items and the other two men, since technically the items were never actually in Ryan's possession. So we really thought it would just get resolved over the weekend or on Monday.
Yeah. And then, of course, it didn't, Ryan. So at what point, did you start thinking, whoa, hang on, this is really sort of escalating now? And also, what was it like actually spending the night in that police station?
So initially we were told, we just have to stay at the police station. So we thought we were going to stay in the lobby. Around 9:00 at night, they came and said, okay, go to the jail cell. So we were a little bit surprised that they were throwing us in the jail cell. It's kind of a building out back behind the police station, and it's one room, really dirty, no beds, no nothing. It's just the floor. And there's a little bathroom attached with a toilet in there that, of course, didn't work. And so, it wasn't the best situation. Luckily, we weren't under arrest technically. We just weren't allowed to leave this police station. So they let us bring in all of our stuff with us. So the two South African men had their car with them and camping gear in their car. So we were able to bring in mattresses and some food and stuff like that, and bug spray and all that. So it was a little bit better than what it could be, but still not the best conditions.
So the other two guys with you, Willem and Eric, how well did you know them before? I'm imagining you know them quite well now.
Yeah, I hadn't met them before. The first time I met them was the day before we got detained.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we did a lot of life together after that.
Yeah. And was there anyone else who'd been arrested in there as well? I mean, that could have been a bit dangerous.
There were some people in and out as we were there. And we tried to stay away from them, I think there's mostly phone theft and stuff like that is what I heard those people were in for. But we just kind of had a good separation between us. Yeah.
So at this point you said you hadn't been arrested, but then of course you end up getting arrested. So how did that happen?
Yeah.
What was the next part of it?
Yeah. So on that Friday, when we first went to the police station, the police brought a lawyer in for us. And the lawyer was telling me, this wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't for the vitamins. And the only reason that's a problem is because of where we are flying these goods. In the northern province of Mozambique, the province of Cabo Delgado, there is a conflict going on right now where there's ISIS cells that are, doing skirmishes against the government and terrorizing people up there. And so it's a pretty sad situation. But that province is where the orphanage happens to be also. So they saw that I was flying these vitamins up to the province with the war zone. And they were concerned about that.
So when you say lawyer, was it an American lawyer or a Mozambique lawyer?
He was a Mozambican lawyer that lived in Inhambane. So, yeah, he expressed the concerns that they thought I might possibly be supporting the terrorists.
So at that point, you must have been feeling pretty scared, because if someone's accusing you of terrorism, I mean, that's quite different than saying, oh, you haven't got some papers for some vitamins. I mean, that's not quite the same thing, is it? So
yeah, and he said, it'll most likely be fine. I was going to see a judge on Monday, and this is stuff you can buy anywhere in any pharmacy, so it should be okay. But if they think it's terrorism, then they'll put you in jail and arrest you, basically. And that's what he said. So at that point, I was a little bit nervous, but again, I was like, well, I can't get arrested, that doesn't happen. Foreigners don't really get arrested, especially missionaries in this country. So I thought it was pretty unlikely that anything major would happen, being an American and with an organization like MAF would be enough to get out of trouble. So I wasn't too scared at that point.
But then things did go down that route, and you were arrested. So what happened at that point?
Yeah, so we saw the judge on Monday, and he had a hearing with us, me and the two South African men. Told stories one at a time, and it all made sense. It all lined up because we were telling the truth. Obviously, the judge was interested in the way I was dressed. He thought I was dressed a little bit on the military side, because I was wearing a khaki shirt and leather boots. So, he was suspicious of me being in the military. And I think what he was trying to find out was, am I working for the US government or something like that to fund these terrorists? And that was a suspicion that they were trying to figure out. So basically at the end of this hearing, he decided that we were possibly supporting terrorists. And that's when it was a little bit surprising.
So what was it that you think that made them so suspicious at that moment? I mean, because, why, if you were doing terrorism, why would you be bringing vitamins in? It's just seems, it's a strange thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's kind of a mystery still. I don't think we ever really got answers to that. Okay. Our best guess is, a couple of weeks prior to this incident, the president of Mozambique addressed the country, and he said that they were suspecting that there were foreign entities funding the terrorists. So it was probably, people trying to be zealous for the country and to help in the war effort any way they can. They see like this opportunity or this possibility really of these foreign people bringing aid to terrorists in that area. And I think it just kind of pushed them, get us arrested and investigate.
Yeah. So then what happened next to the three of you?
Yeah. So at that point, it was getting dark and we got put in the back of a police truck and we were going out to jail. So by this time, two of our national staff, Dinesh and Coelho, they were with me. They came down from Nampula and they were with me during this last this day here of the trial. So on the way to the jail, Coelho jumps in the back that we were talking about, like, God's going to take care of me, basically. And at this point of the journey, this is where I had my first turning point of there's nothing else I can do. And I had no idea where I was going or what the jail was going to be like. I'm going to, I didn't know if it was going to survive or, come out alive or anything. I had no idea. And at that point, I just really put my trust in God and said, Lord, I'm in your hands. I just got immediate peace after that.
Wow. A supernatural peace, because I don't think you get much peace in the back of a police van. No. So amazing. And Annabel, at that point, had you heard from him at all? How long had that been since you'd got those texts?
When Dinesh and Coelho went down there to see him, Dinesh did get a picture of him with Ryan and sent that to me. So I was able to see a picture of Ryan and, he was doing okay. That was good to see. But I don't think that it past Friday night, like over that weekend, I was able to talk with Ryan.
I was able to call her on Sunday, I believe.
Oh, on Sunday. Okay.
Yeah, there was a missionary in Nyambani who came to visit us at the police station. And he really
that's right.
Stood up for us and brought us stuff and tried to make our lives easier too. And it's just wonderful to see how the body of Christ just responds. And with the national staff coming down and taking care of us. And then this random missionary that we had no idea who he was, he came and started ministering to us while we were in this police station waiting for our trial, Wow. But anyways, he let me use his phone and I called Annabel at that point.
Okay.
And what about the boys? Because you got 2 sons and you got another one on the way, which is amazing. Daughter, is it a daughter on the way? In fact,
a daughter. Yeah.
Amazing. Congratulations. What were the boys saying?
Yeah, at that point, our oldest was 3 and our youngest wasn't quite 2 yet. They realized, Dad's not home. But beyond that, they didn't really know much. It was an overnight flight anyway. And so we had prepped them before Ryan had left that he wasn't going to be home for a night. So then when it got delayed more, it was just like, oh, well, he isn't able to come home tonight. He'll be home, tomorrow night or in a couple nights or something along those lines.
Okay. Yeah. So at that point, you were just able to protect them still, I suppose, from knowing too much.
Yes.
And then, just say, okay, Daddy will be home soon. Daddy wasn't home soon though, Ryan, because then it took all the way to I think the 16th of November when you then transferred to actually a high security prison. So, I mean, this gets worse. So tell us about that.
So I went to 4 jails through this whole experience. So there was a jail behind the police station. Then they took me to the city jail where I stayed for 2 nights. And that's where, I was put in a cell with 3 young Mozambican men. And again, I had to put my trust in God and just, as I'm walking down the hall to go get in the cell with them for the first time, I was like, okay, I have no idea what's going to happen. And again, I had that peace as I just committed my way to the Lord. And I got in there and we actually had some really great conversations. So I was there for 2 nights and then I got transferred.
And Ryan, were you on your own or were you with Willem and Eric at that point? Did you all stay together or were you separated?
So at this point I was separated from them.
Okay.
I was just by myself with these three guys and they were with other guys in their own cells. So we got transferred all together from that prison to the provincial prison where we stayed a week. So in that one, I was put in a cell with 32 other men. And
wow. And Ryan, what language are you speaking at this point with everybody? Portuguese?
Yeah, mostly Portuguese.
Yeah.
Some people spoke English. Some people didn't speak either Portuguese or English, but I was able to communicate fairly well.
So
And a lot of people,
32 men in a cell. How big's the cell?
yeah, it was probably 30 feet by 15 feet. So
Wow.
not
Okay.
not very big.
Not very big for 32
Yeah,
men. And I suppose, were some of these
yeah.
people like dangerous? Like, are we talking like murderers, rapists? Are we talking like big time
Yeah.
crime?
The thing is, I never asked anyone what they did.
No, okay, good.
And
Fair enough.
I wasn't really interested, and I didn't really want to know. Yeah.
Yeah, you
But
don't
I'm sure
want to
there
know
was
that. Yeah.
there was everyone from, phone thieves to murderers. That's probably a good mix in there.
And were you the only
But
person not Mozambican?
I was the only Westerner.
Okay.
Yeah, I stood out pretty well.
Yeah, I was about to say, not much
Yeah.
chance of blending in then in a
Yeah.
room of 32 people shoulder to shoulder. So yeah, carry on. Tell us about that cell. I mean, what about food and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so the really cool thing is the two national staff that came down, Denise and Coelho, they would send in food 3 times a day. They would send in anything I asked for. We'd communicate by notes. So I'd send out a note with the food and the empty food baskets.
So
and they
was
would
there
just
no food provided by the prison?
All 4 jails provided some sort of food. I didn't really eat any the first 3 jails because it was usually just a soup, like a really watery soup that didn't look appealing. I would have eaten it, but it probably wasn't very healthy or substantial. Yeah,
I'm trying to imagine though. So someone comes to give you food, but what about other people who aren't getting food? They're eating the watery soup. Surely they wanted your food.
Yeah, so nobody really asked for it, but I did share it with a lot of people.
Okay.
And usually I couldn't eat everything, so I would share it, and they were really grateful.
So what happened next? So how long were you in that third jail for?
So I was there for 1 week.
Okay.
And then I was transferred to the maximum security prison. They have a Bible study twice a week in this jail. I read the verse I was going to teach on, and right after I read the verse, a guard came to the window and started yelling at me, saying that I'm being transferred. So, everyone jumped up, and I was about to teach this message, and then it suddenly gets cut short. It's kind of interesting. And everyone jumps up to get all my stuff together, and I go outside, and the other 2 South African men are there with all their stuff. So I'm asking okay, what's going on? And nobody knew. So I look down the hallway, towards the exit of the jail, and I see these men in there, and they're kind of suiting up. They have olive drab fatigues on, and black bulletproof vests. They have AK-47s, and then I see that they're putting on ski masks. So I'm looking at them. I'm like, are those guys for us? And
Wow.
There's no markings on them anywhere. So I'm trying to figure out who these guys are. Yeah, so we got in the truck and we started driving. We drove for about 5 hours in the back of this truck, mostly at night, down to the capital city. And we had no idea where we were going. Nobody told us. We were just driving through the night, south. And we kind of figured that we were being transferred to another prison. And I saw that the chase vehicle behind us was a prison vehicle with a prison system. So I figured, okay, this can't be anything too extreme because they're using prison vehicles, not military or whatever. And it turned out we arrived at the most secure prison in the whole country. Wow. And we go in, and there's one building that is cement. It's tall, it's big, and it looks ominous. And there's 2 extra fences going around it inside this camp. So we start walking, and we start going towards that building.
Oh.
We go inside, and the cells look like safes, basically. The doors are several inches thick, and the little tiny window like the glass is probably 2 inches thick also. So it looks like a bulletproof door, like a safe, you know.
And
So we
you're
go
being
like all the
led to
way.
this by a man wearing the ski mask, dressed in black. This is beginning to sound like literally like the worst nightmare. I mean,
Yeah.
you must have been really scared at that point.
Yeah, at this point this was in the middle of the night. I figured, okay, this is where I'm going to live until they figure this out, you know. And they put me in my cell, like at the end of the hall. And it's actually, to my surprise, a pretty nice cell. There was I guess it's all cement, but there's an actual mattress. It has my own toilet, my own shower, my own sink, and it's a decent size. It's not huge, but it's like a long, narrow cell that is big enough to not feel like claustrophobic in. So a lot better than the previous conditions I was in. So I was happy at that
and not
point.
31 other men in there. I suppose that probably helped. So was it clean as well? Was it?
It was dusty, but fairly clean. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Annabel, had you heard anything at this point? So how long had this been now since that phone call on the Sunday night?
So this would have been about 10 days, I think, from when I talked to him on that Sunday. MAF was great during this whole time of being like the go-between me and the lawyer and like our country director. He lived right next door to us. So the country director and his wife would come over in the evenings and give me an update on what we've been able to do that day, what we know about Ryan's case, his condition, that kind of stuff. On Monday night, I was on a call with MAF leadership, and he had just gotten the update about the terrorism aspect of the case. And with Ryan in the vehicle heading off to jail, being a turning point for him, that was a big turning point for me. Well, I was like in tears. I knew about the terrorism going on in Cabo Delgado, but I didn't realize that was even in question right now, any of that. But as I'm like sobbing and trying to catch my breath and like just praying and realizing that this is when faith becomes real. I don't know how long Ryan could get sentenced for, like, am I going to be raising my kids on my own, or are we going to get this resolved tomorrow? I had no idea what's about to come. So that was like a big turning point for me where I was like, nope, I have to trust in God in this and rely on him. So then Ryan was in jail before the maximum security prison for 9 or 10 days. And during that time, I was able to talk with him on the phone 3 times. They were like 5 minutes each time. And we were able just to, touch base, like, are you okay? Like, I'm not sure if he's able to tell me truthfully everything over the phone, but as much as I can, like, are they treating you okay enough? Like, also reassuring him so he's not concerned about us. Like, the boys are okay. I'm okay. We're working on things. We're praying for you. And then November 16th, he's taken in the middle of the night, and my teammates come over and they let me know, we don't know where Ryan is. And that was kind of a scary moment because he saw the prison emblem on that chase vehicle and knew that he was probably being transferred prisons. We didn't know that. And so we were like, is he being kidnapped by, like, is this a different agency within the government? Is this still within the prison system? We just really didn't know what was going on. So at that point, within MAF, it became much more of a crisis situation, where now the boys and I are also in danger because we just don't know what's going on. So that's when conversations started about getting the boys and I out of the country.
So at what point did you leave the country then?
He was transferred prisons on November 16th. November 17th, it was decided that we were going to leave the country. And less than 24 hours later, on November 18th, the boys and I were on an airplane back to America. So it was a very quick decisions
Whoa.
to get us out.
I mean, Annabel, what was that flight like? Leaving, like literally
Yeah.
every minute you're getting further away from your husband who you don't even know where he is.
Yeah. So thank God we found out when I was in the airport that we did know where Ryan was, that he was just transferred prisons. I mean, we maximum security prison doesn't sound very good, but he was transferred prisons. And
what you mean is you were worried that he could have been abducted, it could have been ISIS, it could have been anybody or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, we had no idea. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we knew he was transferred to prison, a different prison. And at this point, MAF had hired a lawyer, as he's a Mozambican lawyer. He had been able to make contact through his firm. We also had contact with the US Embassy at that point. So again, while I'm waiting at the airport to board my flight, I got a call from a representative from the US Embassy letting me know that he was also able to confirm where Ryan was. He was going to see him on Monday. So it was nice to be able to leave knowing that there was this support between the lawyer and the embassy in place, but still sitting on that plane with the two boys waiting to take off. It's like there's that battle of, I know that it's for all of our safety for us to go, like we have to do this, but also it feels like I'm abandoning my husband in a way because he's still going to be in Mozambique while we're leaving to safety, you know? I don't have to think about the 4 flights I have to take. I just have to think about getting to our seat on this flight. I just have to think about this hour, this minute, not the next 40 hours.
Yeah. And what were your biggest fears at that point? I suppose that Ryan would die, that you would never see him again. I mean, what kind of things were going through your mind?
Probably the closest I ever got to that would have been when he was kidnapped and we didn't know where he was. It was like, is he going to be tortured somewhere? Just because we weren't aware of what was going on. But that was very short time period. Okay. So I think my biggest concern during all this was that he was going to end up getting charged because none of this made sense up to this point. So why wouldn't he be charged? Because that doesn't make sense either.
What did you tell your boys? I mean, you're leaving daddy behind. That's like weird.
Yeah. So at this point, it'd been 2 weeks since Ryan had originally been held at the police station. And so what I'd been telling my boys, mostly my oldest, the airplane was stuck. So daddy can't get home, which was accurate because they also held the airplane as part of the investigation. When we had to prepare to leave, this was right before Thanksgiving in America, about a week before. And so I said, we're going to go on an adventure. We're going to go see some snow. We're going to go, spend the holidays. Or at that point, I was hoping it was just Thanksgiving in America. So I pumped it up as a fun adventure for them. And they really clung to that.
Wow. Well, that is a parenting moment. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about my own children and what on earth would I be saying to them at that point? Ryan, back to you. Why were they actually moving you around? I mean, what was that all about?
Yeah, I think that the case kept on getting passed up the chain. So at first it was a city case, and then it got moved up to the province, and then I got moved to provincial jail. And then I think at that point it moved to the department that investigates like foreign crimes, which is the kind of a federal level. At that point, the case was classified as top secret. So I think the main idea behind moving me to the maximum security prison was to prevent information from, going back and forth to me. So, theoretically, I was supposed to be cut off and not talk to anyone the whole time I was there. So I think that's the main reason they moved me around so much.
So tell us about the time then in that high security prison. What happened next? You go in, you discover the cell is a bit nicer than it was in the other place, but then what's next?
Me and the 2 other men would go to like the headquarters building, and they would ask all the same questions over and over again. They put me in a room by myself, and I was just waiting, and wondering, okay, what's this about? And then, my lawyer walks in, And I was just so relieved he found me, because I had no idea that anyone knew where I was. But
Wow.
so that was a fun moment. Um, and that's when I got to know the lawyer, and he turned out to be a really great lawyer. His name is Danilo. Yeah, while we were in that high security prison, um, for the first 55 days, I was under quarantine, which is it's kind of like solitary confinement. So I wasn't allowed to go outside. Um, like all the other prisoners in our building were allowed to go outside for an hour a day to get sunlight and walk around and stuff. But for us three, we had to stay at our cells for the first 55 days. The only time we'd go out is if one of our lawyers came, or if the embassy came for me, or yeah, that was basically it. That's the only time we'd go outside the building. We
And
did.
what kind of temperature is it in Mozambique in well, it was December at that point, yeah?
A couple months there where it was just super hot and you just sit around and sweat all day long because you have nothing else to do. And then other times it was actually pretty nice and actually a little bit chilly, which I really enjoyed, except that I made the shower a lot colder. But I'd rather take a cold shower than bake in the heat.
So Ryan, tell us about a typical day in that high security prison. What was your routine like?
Yeah, so I'd wake up around 7 when they brought breakfast, get my piece of bread, and sometimes by then food from the outside would arrive. So I'd have breakfast and tea, and then I would usually at that point go outside for an hour. So this is after the quarantine period. They began letting me and the other two men go outside for an hour a day, and we'd walk around, talk or just not talk and just hang out together and talk to other prisoners and stuff. Then we go back to our cells, and usually I just read all day. The later part, I got a deck of cards sent in, so I play solitaire a lot. Actually, got a lot of really good books sent in, so I had a really good fun time reading, and that really helped me on my faith journey through this situation. But yeah, eventually dinner would come, and I tried to make it a point at some point during the day I would do like some push-ups and some jumping jacks and some squats and stuff like that to just stay loose. And
Yeah.
it was kind of hard to do though. Just find the motivation to do it. And then usually after dinner, I would make it a point to just sing a few hymns, out loud. My favorites were "Great Is Thy Faithfulness," "Holy, Holy, Holy," and "It Is Well with My Soul," as well as some Christmas songs. I memorized most of those because I wasn't sure how long I would have the lyrics to them that I got sent in. So yeah, I really encourage people to memorize scripture and songs because you never know when you'll need them.
Well, yeah, and of course the singing did bust Peter out of prison, of course. So you never know. I suppose
Yeah.
it might have happened for you as well. Did your singing improve?
No. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, so after the exercise, your meal, and then bedtime. What time is that?
Yeah. So I actually didn't have any way to tell time. The best way I could tell time is by looking outside. There's like the fence was a little bit shiny, so I could tell when the sun was like straight up and down by the sheen on the fence. So I figured that was around noon, and around 6 o'clock, I figured, around the time the sun went down was dinner time. But because I was itching so bad, I had a lot of trouble sleeping. So I would keep myself up as long as I could, like playing cards or reading or something, until I was just really, really tired. And then I would just fall right to sleep. And I'd have a good night's sleep after that, usually. So, and then I'd wake up at 7 the next day and do it all over again.
And tell us about the insects, because you got bitten by insects. Is that right?
Yes. So there were mosquitoes. The national staff sent in a mosquito net, so I was able to put that up, and that was great. But the biggest problem that I had was at the provincial jail, where I was in the room with 32 other guys. I caught scabies, which is a skin parasite that causes you to itch really bad. And pretty much everyone in that jail had it. We caught it. We got to this new jail, the maximum security prison, and then 2 weeks later, me and the two South African men, we all started itching around the same time, and the itching was almost nonstop, and it was worse at night. Usually, it come on a lot around 5 o'clock or so, and it made it pretty miserable to just be there with nothing to do except to scratch yourself. So we were pretty distressed the first few weeks there with that. The prison had a little clinic, and we'd go there like every couple days to try something else. Or
and you guys didn't realize that it was
scabies. We didn't realize it was scabies. We thought it was allergies, or something in the water, or we had no idea. So we tried all kinds of stuff. We took the allergy medication, didn't help. We tried drinking only bottled water, didn't help. We tried to bathe in only bottled water, and that didn't help. And we were just like, we just could not figure out what was wrong. So that was definitely the hardest part of the whole. Well, the hardest part was the separation, I think, but the hardest part physically was the itching. But I'm also thankful that I had those other two men, because we were able to encourage each other.
You say you were able to go to a clinic in the prison. So was there a doctor there? I mean, did they eventually work out what was wrong?
MAF suggested that it was scabies. So I brought that idea to the clinic, and they didn't seem to think it was. So we kept on going down the allergies path. But eventually, about 4 months into the entire detainment, they started like cleaning out our cells and scrubbing everything. They gave us brand new mattresses. They cleaned our cells. That didn't work. Then they started giving us a lotion to put on they said it was for head lice. And so we were like, oh, well, we don't have head lice, but I guess we'll try it. So we started putting it on, and it helped, amazingly. I wouldn't itch for like 2 or 3 days. And then I put on some more. It turns out, I found out afterwards that is the actual medicine for scabies that they were giving us.
Wow.
And we didn't know.
Yeah, that's really cool. Annabel, did you know at this point that he was unwell with the itching and the scabies? Had you been able to hear about that? What was the communication levels?
Yeah, when he was at this prison, we were still able to communicate through letters. After his 55 days of quarantine, I think we ended up having 2 phone calls before he was released. And so I was aware of the itching through the communication of the letters.
Everyone listening, by the way, is now itching.
Yeah.
It's a kind of psychological thing, isn't it? You start talking about that, everyone's now itching. So you were imprisoned in total for about 4 months. Now, I think the worst bit was that it included Christmas 2022. So what was that like on Christmas Day, Ryan, first, to be away from your family, but not just away from your family, like in a high security prison?
Yeah, for me, it was just really strikingly normal day. Just one of the other days, you expect it to be something, like a big holiday or something like that. But in prison, it's just like any other day. So yeah, the only difference was they gave meat with their daily meal, which I wasn't really eating because I was getting food brought in. MAF hired a lady to bring food. She'd actually walk a mile each way to the prison twice a day to bring me a meal. Wow. Or 2 meals. So yeah, really thankful for that. And her cooking was really good.
And Ryan, you mentioned that the food was a bit different on Christmas Day in the prison. I think normally, did you have chicken feet, or did you have chicken feet on Christmas Day? Just clarify that for me.
Yeah. So in the maximum security prison, they would give 1 meal a day, basically around 5 or 6 o'clock. They would give a big heaping stack of beans with chicken feet cooked into them. And that would go with rice or shima, which is like a cornmeal mash that they have. Like the chicken feet were just in there, and it's not much meat on them or anything. It's kind of weird. Like it's kind of like eating little fingers, So I couldn't get past it. Like it tasted fine though. Yeah. So on Christmas, they gave actual beef, like a little steak. Pretty tough beef, but it's more than just beans and rice. So and then a little bottle of Coke Zero along with it. On Christmas Day, I did try the beef that they gave. I think when you're just separated and just kind of in that traumatic situation, like it didn't really, it was all like bad. Yeah.
And Annabel, what about for you and the boys for Christmas? What was that like?
I was at MAF headquarters in Idaho, staying at housing they have. And so my family was able to come and spend Christmas with us, which was a blessing, because I think that if I had just been me and the boys, that would have been hard in a different way. It would have been more consuming, probably realizing that Ryan wasn't with us. So at least for the boys, it was still exciting. They had their uncles with them. They had their aunt and my mom, their Nona, with them. But for me, sitting there on the couch and it's like all going on around you, but it's like Ryan should be right next to me and he's not. We always do a gift on Christmas Eve for our boys. I grew up with my mom getting us pajamas on Christmas Eve. And so I've passed that on. So the boys get their Christmas Eve pajamas and then wake up in the morning and we do gifts and we read the story of the birth of Christ. And then we just spend time, as a family and enjoying time together, playing games, just spending that time. So that's why it was really noticeable when Ryan wasn't there with us, because normally we would be there as a family, just spending that time together.
So Ryan, when did you start to kind of see a bit of light at the end of this? Because you must have been thinking, like, is this ever going to end? What's next?
They're only allowed to hold people for 4 months without pressing charges. So, when the 4 months was coming up, we were getting excited, like, okay, we're probably going to get released because they're not charging us yet. And, so the 4 months came, then nothing happened. So the time just kept going on. We're still excited, like, okay, any day, it'll come, and nothing happened for another 2 weeks. And, by this time we had seen so many disappointments. We're like, okay, well, we're just going to be held here forever. This was our chance to get out, and there's no movement. But one day the chief of our building came, and I was outside with the 2 South African men, and we were talking, and he came up to us and he said, do you believe in God? And we were like, yeah, He's like, remember this day, March 14th, 2023. Just remember this day. So later that day, I had just gotten out of the shower, and Eric was still in the shower. And, I'm getting dressed or something. And then people start yelling. I realize they're yelling, like, you're going home, you're going home. Like, and like the whole place was in like an uproar of this yelling, and it was for us. We were just saying that we were going home, we're being released. So I started yelling at Eric to get out of the shower because he's going home, and it was getting close to the end of the day. So the office was going to close soon. So they rushed us back to our cells and loaded up all of our stuff in the back of the truck. We did our paperwork, and they let us out. But I was asking, like, okay, so where's my passport? And they're like, oh, you're not getting your passport back yet. So that would happen about 6 months later. So I was a little bit disappointed, but at least I was getting out, So the big doors open and they let us out. My lawyer's assistant was waiting outside for me, so I got in his car and we drove off. And I used his phone to video call Annabel. That's the first time I'd seen her face since the whole thing happened.
Wow. So how many months was that?
So I was in jail for exactly 4.5 months. I didn't see her the whole time.
What did you say to each other after that? I mean, Annabel, did you have any
I
idea?
remember.
Did you have any idea he was about to video call you?
No, I didn't know I was going to get a video call. The boys were in the room with me, and so they were all excited. And in their, little kid minds, they're like, "Okay, wait, he's released. So when's he coming? Like, why is he not here?"
Yeah.
But we were all very excited. Yes.
That is amazing. I mean, that was Christmas Day, wasn't it, for you? that was better than
Yeah.
Christmas Day. So what happened then? Because obviously you couldn't leave the country. So where did you go?
Yeah, so I stayed in Maputo for 2 weeks, and then I went back up to our home in Nampula. And about 2 weeks after that, Annabelle and the boys came back to Mozambique, and we were finally reunited after like 5.5 months of being apart.
What was the date, and what exactly happened?
Yeah, so we were finally reunited on March 29th of 2023, and Annabelle and the boys arrived at the airport, and I kind of watched them get off the plane, and we arranged it so that, we'd be in a room by ourselves when we got reunited. So we spend a few moments as a family instead of having like a bunch of people around, And so I was waiting in the room for them, and they came on in, and the boys ran in, and it was just a wonderful reunion. And it's wonderful seeing Annabelle again, and just, grabbing the boys and, feeling that they're real. And, I had like a couple pictures of them that I had in jail, and I just look at those pictures like all day long and stuff. So it was just wonderful to just hold the real thing finally.
Oh, that's lovely.
So our oldest decided that we needed to celebrate all of the holidays that Ryan missed. And so he had created Give Thanks for a Merry Valentine's Day. And so now on March 14th, which is the date that Ryan had been released, we celebrate Give Thanks for a Merry Valentine's Day as a way to commemorate.
That is amazing. I think that could catch on, actually. I think we'd quite like to celebrate. And I guess they couldn't let you work because you fly planes and you could leave the country.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I wasn't allowed to work. I wasn't allowed to leave the country, and they had my passport and my phone and all that stuff. What was happening was the investigation was still going. They just couldn't hold me in jail any longer. So they weren't going to close the investigation yet. So I had to report to the local investigator's office every 2 weeks. And if I was going to leave the city, I'd have to let them know and stuff like that. We spent 6 months just being in Nampula. And I was able to help build or coordinate building some of the houses on our MAF property. So that kept me pretty busy.
And I guess, Ryan, your boys looked a bit different because they're quite young. So like 6 months nearly, that's a long time, isn't it, in a kid's life?
Yeah, my youngest, Hezekiah, he turned 2 while I was in jail. So when we parted, he was barely talking. He didn't talk very much. But when we were reunited, he was a little chatterbox, and he had opinions and things to say. And so he was like, it was like almost like meeting him for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Because he was just so much more talkative.
Yeah.
Elias, the older one, he didn't change a whole lot, but it was really good to see them. It was like, I don't know, hard to explain how it was.
Yeah, because it's so out of the ordinary. I mean, you can't. Yeah. So why was it all taking so long then? I mean, why did you have to stay around for 6 months in the country?
Yeah, they were investigating that whole time, I guess. The lawyer was every week going into the investigator's office and asking for how things are going and trying to push a little bit to get things moving. So yeah, it took that whole 6 months. And then they finally gave my passport back. But again, it was because they could not hold it any longer without pressing charges. So they had to give all of our stuff back.
Okay.
So just kind of by default, we got it. And at that point, we left the country.
So when you guys returned to America together, was 5th of October, I think?
The investigation continued up until the case was finally officially closed without pressing charges.
Wow.
So,
that must have been a moment,
yeah.
wasn't it? How did you hear that news?
Yeah, so we have a security manager at MAF. Her name is Jill. So she had been handling the case and the crisis management team. And she was the one talking to the lawyer and distributing the updates and stuff. So she was actually here in Nampa, Idaho. I was working here in the hangar, working on airplanes, and I was sitting at my desk, and Jill comes up and she shows me her phone, and it's an email that says the case has been officially closed, and here's the document. I was just like, what? It was really unexpected. And the first thing I did was I took a picture of the phone and sent it to Annabel. And so we were really excited, and we celebrated. We went out to eat the next day, and that the most exciting part for us is this allows us to return to Mozambique.
And so the other two guys with you, Willem and Eric, is their case closed as well? Was it the same case, or was it an individual one for each of you?
Yeah, the three of us were in exactly the same process the whole way through. Okay. So, even though we're different organizations, different roles, they see us as the same. So they were released the same day. They got their passports back on the same day, and then the case closed for them on the same day also. Okay.
And what about the plane as well? Because they seized the plane, did they?
Yeah. So MAF in Mozambique, negotiated a lot to get the plane released. So it wasn't held up like as long as we were, basically. And so they finally released it a couple months in, I believe.
What about the actual goods that you had in the plane? Did they destroy them? Did they end up at the orphanage?
So when they gave my passport back and my phone back, they released the goods at that point also. So they were available for the two men to pick up if they wanted to. I'm not sure if they actually did or not. I probably would just leave it.
Yeah, you can't really blame them if they did anymore.
But so I'm not sure what actually happened to the goods, but they were released. We had been here in Nampa, Idaho, waiting for this past year and a half for the case to close. And now that it's closed, we can go back to Mozambique. That's like the most exciting part for me. So we get to go back.
The most exciting part is going back to the people that imprisoned you wrongly. I mean, that is amazing that you're going to do that. And you're also going to do that with an extra child as well. Lots of people would think, okay, fair enough, go and do something else maybe now. But you guys are saying, no, we're going back. I mean, why? What's the main motivation?
So there was never really a time where we didn't want to go back. For me, I wanted to be an MAF pilot since I was 15. And, I felt really strongly that the Lord was leading me in that direction. And Annabel, like when we were married, she wanted to do missions also. So we were united in heading towards MAF. And, we believe that God's given us, special skills and abilities and especially opportunities to serve there, and would just like to take that opportunity and go, because a lot of people can't go there, and it's a place that really needs missionaries and strong believers to help build up the northern part of the country. So we do it out of love for the people. It's hard to imagine going anywhere else.
Yeah. And Annabel, the time frame then, when are you planning to go back, and when are you going to give birth? I'm wondering how that's all going to work.
She could come anytime now. So her due date is in a little less than 2 weeks. So anytime now, we'll have a baby before Christmas, and then we'll have to work on getting, her birth certificate and her passport, and we'll have to apply for visa. So we expect we'll be able to go back to Mozambique maybe mid-February, could be March, depending on how long the paperwork takes. So basically we're just waiting for her to come.
And that is all we have time for this episode. My big thanks to Ryan and Annabel Koher, the brave couple who survived their ordeal yet have chosen to return to Mozambique to continue serving isolated people. You've been listening to me, Josh Carter, and Flying for Life, MAF UK's podcast. If you would like to support MAF's work around the world, please visit maf-uk.org/give. Thank you. And until next time, bye for now.